The sun was setting over our manicured backyard, casting a golden glow that made the graduation balloons look like they were filled with honey. My daughter, my adopted daughter Maya, stood at the center of it all, 18 years old and radiant with a future I had helped build. In my hands, I held a gift. It wasn't wrapped in shiny paper from a fancy store. It was a simple, polished oak box, its surface engraved with a single, sprawling tree. My wife, Sarah, flitted through the crowd, her laughter a tinkling bell that usually filled me with warmth. Tonight, it felt different. She was in her element, showcasing our success, our beautiful home, our accomplished daughter. "Leo, for heaven's sake, just give it to her," she whispered, brushing past me with a tray of canapes. "We have the car keys for later. Let's get the homespun stuff out of the way." Homespun. That was her word for the things I made with my hands, a gentle, condescending tease I'd learned to ignore. I was a graphic designer by trade, but a woodworker by soul. It was the one part of me that felt entirely my own. "Maya," I called out, my voice a little tighter than I intended. "I have something for you." She excused herself from a cluster of friends, all of them dressed in clothes that cost more than my first car. Her smile was bright, but it didn't quite reach the eyes that had once looked at me with unadulterated adoration. "Hey, Dad," she said, the title now sometimes feeling like a formality. I handed her the box. "I made this for you, for your dorm room, to hold your dreams, or your pens, whichever you need more." She took it, her perfectly manicured fingers tracing the engraving. "A tree? A little cliché, don't you think, Dad?" she said, her voice loud enough for her friends to hear. A few of them snickered. My heart clenched. "It's a family tree, Maya. Our family tree." She popped a small brass clasp and opened the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of dark velvet, wasn't a new smartphone or a stack of cash. It was a single, hand-turned wooden pen and a small, framed photograph. The photo was of the day we finalized her adoption. She was 7, a scrawny, terrified thing with huge eyes, clinging to my leg as if I were the only solid thing in a spinning world. I was kneeling down, looking at her, not at the camera, my face a mask of such pure, unwavering love that it still hurt to look at. Maya picked up the photo, her lip curling. "Oh my God, I look awful in this. What were you thinking?" "And a pen." She held it up between her thumb and forefinger as if it were a dirty worm. "You couldn't spring for a Mont Blanc like Mom did? Seriously, Dad, this is so you. Always a day late and $1 short on class." The backyard, which had been filled with a warm buzz of conversation, went quiet, and then the laughter started. It wasn't just from her friends. It came from the neighbors, from Sarah's colleagues. And then, cutting through it all, was the sound I would never forget, the high, clear, unrestrained laughter of my wife, Sarah. She was holding her stomach, tears of mirth in her eyes, as if this was the funniest punchline she'd ever heard. "Oh, Leo," she managed to gasp between laughs. "Only you. I told you to just stick to the car." I stood there, the oak box feeling like a lead weight in my now empty hands. The man who had stayed up late, sanding the wood until it was silken, who had chosen the perfect photograph, who had poured every ounce of his fatherly love into this one, simple object. I was a statue of humiliation, the nice guy, the try-hard, the man who was always just slightly embarrassing. I looked at Maya, who was now showing the photo to her friends, laughing along with them at the memory of her own vulnerability, at the memory of my love. And something broke, not with a bang, but with a quiet, final click, like a lock turning shut. The laughter began to die down, people sensing they had crossed a line, their mirth turning into awkward coughs. Sarah was wiping her eyes, a residual smirk on her face. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm off. I simply walked over to the patio table where my glass of iced tea sat. I picked it up, took a slow, deliberate sip, and set it down. The silence was now absolute, heavy with anticipation for my reaction, my expected, pathetic apology. I turned to face Maya. "You're right," I said, my voice eerily calm. It was a foolish gift. I was a foolish man to think that the past 17 years of my life were building towards anything other than this moment. Sarah's smirk faded. "Leo, Don't be so dramatic. It was a joke. A joke, I repeated, nodding slowly. I looked at Maya. Do you know why I chose that tree, Maya? It's not just any tree. It's the oak that stood outside the group home you were in. The one you told me you used to hide under when you were scared. I found a picture of it and spent 6 months learning how to engrave so I could get it just right. Maya's face went blank. And the pen, I continued, picking it up from where she dropped it on the table. I made it from a branch of the willow tree in our old backyard, the one you loved to swing on, before your mother decided the neighborhood wasn't upscale enough for us. Sarah's face was turning red. That's enough, Leo. But you're 18 now, I said, my gaze locked on Maya, my voice dropping, becoming lethally quiet. You're an adult, and you've made it abundantly clear what you value. So, I think it's time you knew the whole story. I took a deep breath. The secret I had sworn to protect. The promise I had made to myself. The reason I was a day late and $1 short, as you so kindly put it, for most of your childhood, wasn't because I lacked ambition. It was because every spare dollar I had, every bonus, every bit of overtime, went into a trust fund for you. A fund your mother doesn't know about. It was for your college, for your future. The car she's so proud of giving you? I paid for half of it from that fund, telling her it was a work bonus. Sarah stared at me, her mouth agape. But here's the part one promised I would never, ever tell you, I said, and for the first time, my voice cracked with emotion. The reason I fought so hard to adopt you, as a single man, against all the odds, wasn't just because I wanted to be a father. It was because your biological mother was my sister. The gasp from the crowd was audible. Maya looked like she'd been slapped. She died when you were a baby. It was a promise I made to her. To raise you, to love you as my own, and to never let you feel the shadow of that tragedy. I changed my whole life for you. I took a stable, boring job to provide a home. I never married, until Sarah, because I was terrified no woman would want a man with a ready-made family. I built my entire world around you, and you just stood there and laughed at it. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my keyring. I slowly, deliberately, removed the key to our house and set it on the table next to the discarded oak box. My ambition was you, Maya. It was always you. And now that you've made it clear that was a failure, I suppose I'm free. I looked at Sarah, whose face was a mask of shock and dawning horror. The trust fund documents are in my office safe. The password is her adoption date. It's all yours. Consider it my final, embarrassing gift. And with that, I turned and walked away. I didn't take my car. I walked out of the backyard, down the driveway, and onto the sidewalk, the sound of the party's stunned silence fading behind me. There was no dramatic chase. No tearful reconciliation on the street. The fallout was a slow, painful earthquake. Maya tried to call, her voicemails a jumble of tears and apologies. Sarah sent pleading texts, saying I had humiliated her. But the bond was broken. I had offered my whole, true, flawed self to my family, and they had laughed at it. I moved into a small apartment and went back to my woodworking, not as a hobby, but as a living. It took months before Maya found me. She came to my workshop, her face stripped of its makeup and its arrogance. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She just held up the oak box. You were right, she whispered. It's the most beautiful thing I own. We are learning, now, to build a new tree, one with broken branches and scarred bark. It will never be the grand, beautiful thing I once dreamed of, but for the first time, it feels real. And for a man who was laughed at for being a failure, real is more than enough.